here's something else I've noticed, and these are a few small examples, but I'm sure there are some wider ones. But you've had some recent prominent examples in the last few years of married men who have children deciding they want to be women. What is the mainstream society's response to that? Yay, stunning, brave, amazing. You live your truth.
The most popular YouTuber in the world, Mr. Beast, his one of his sort of characters in his films,
one
basically.
Of his friends,
I don't remember his name. Do you remember his name?
I think his name's Chris.
Chris.
I think.
Married man, has a beautiful little boy, I think, and now he's out dressing as a woman, saying, "I'm a woman now."
And what's no one talking about? What about your wife and kid? Like, it's
wasn't there a video he put up? He was putting high heels on his son.
I don't know.
His 3-year-old son. He's now cross-dressing his 3-year-old son.
But
the whole internet's like, yay!
That's what I'm saying, right? The response. There's no thought of like, wait, what about the kid? What about the people impacted by this thing? It's just, no, you live your truth. You be selfish. You like, look, if you're gonna go do that, like at least have the decency to be single and not be involving other people and your children and whatever. The same thing happened with the whole, Bruce to Caitlyn Jenner situation, right? It was just, oh my gosh, stunning, brave, women of the year, amazing. Like no one is like, wait, doesn't this person have like a whole family? And
what's so sad about that? They made reality TV out of the distress of his, at the time, I think the Jenner girls were pretty young, and I think the whole Kar Jenner, conglomerate is so toxic overall to society. That's another topic, right? Yeah. But you look at is he my dad still? Do I get to call him dad? I can't say him.
I don't know.
My own father. You lose your father, but now you have to call your father a mother. I mean, it's
the whole thing is weird. But this is what I mean. I mean, with that whole movement, all these stuff, like people do not, right? There's no one's like, all right, what's actually best and sane for children? It's just like, no, we've got these ideologies and we want to push this and we want to push that. It's all coming from the adults, right? It's the adults in the room not being adults in the room. And
well, what do you think about these adults that are saying, well, my 3-year-old wants to be a girl. My boy wants to be. I think it is. That's where it gets really freaky.
I think it is. Have you noticed it's mostly women doing that?
I have. And I've noticed it. And as a mother of young kids, I see boys and girls and friends with young kids, they're not like super into gender stereotypes. They will sort of like put on mom's high heels, or the little girl will like be interested in what makes they might not match your stereotypical female or male activities. That doesn't mean their biology is wrong and they're born in the wrong body. It just means they're a little kid.
Oh no. I mean, remember tomboys? I remember those. Right?
You're not allowed to be a tomboy.
Like now they're like,
now you're just a boy.
Now I was like, all right, okay.
Yeah, we interviewed Chloe Cole and she was just saying, no one told me. I mean, this is a girl who at 12 years old didn't know, she was maybe a little bit on the spectrum. She wasn't sure like her identity. All the girls were really sexual looking, and feminine, and she was more of a tomboy. And she's like, okay, I guess maybe I'm a boy. She's into like the social media transgender world where there are all these artistic transgender ideology stuff. And she's like, maybe that's me. So they give her a double mastectomy at 15.
Insane. Unreal.
And then afterwards, she's like, what did you do to me?
It's crazy. The amount of lawsuit. Here's one of my predictions. I think that in the next 1 to 2 decades, you are going to have millions of people who are now young people who are going to harbor incredible animosity, resentment, if not outright hatred for their own parents and for the establishments that allowed this to happen.
What's going to happen then?
I think there's going to be giant lawsuits 10 to 15 years from now. I think there's going to be some huge, like, cataclysmic lawsuits that are going to be coming down the pipeline. I think that you're going to have a generation, not a whole not like everybody, but like significant numbers of people who are going to harbor a lot of perhaps arguably well-deserved animosity and resentment towards the, quote unquote grown-ups who did not guide them properly and who just let them to, because think about the consequences of this. You're going to have, I don't know the numbers, but you're going to have potentially hundreds of thousands or low millions of people, young people in this country and other Western countries who by the time they're 25 or 30 years old will be infertile. They'll be sterile. They literally will not even be able to, they won't be properly functioning biologically because of the stuff that has been done to them. things that have been added.
Yeah,
things
the
that have been
number
removed
2
or whatever.
service at Planned Parenthood now that's grown the fastest besides abortion is giving out hormone treatment and puberty blockers.
Yeah, and
giving out hormone treatment. Not puberty blockers, but hormone treatments.
Yeah, and as we all know,
which can
it can sterilize. And if you're a 15-year-old and you've been sterilized or you're on the path to being, 15-year-olds aren't really thinking very far ahead of the line. It's actually why you don't let them consent, because their brains haven't properly developed to think about long-term consequences. It's why a 12-year-old can't go get a tattoo, right? We understand this with many other things, but people have lost their minds on all these other ones. So I do think that the fallout from this is going to be severe. I think the weird, quote unquote, progressive ideologues who are, pushing this or pushing it on their kids or trying to be trendy and, whatever, it's trendy to have a trans child, whatever it is. I think some of those kids are going to hate their parents. I genuinely think that some of them are going to hate their parents, are going to hate what they've done to them, especially the ones who have been like paraded around and,
sad.
Done all this stuff. And a lot of it is going to be justified, but they're going to be the medical establishment, the therapists and the people who are like pushing them all down. What do they call it? Affirming, this whole like affirmation.
Yeah, in California, it's illegal to not affirm.
It's insane.
Meaning you can't actually treat gender dysphoria. You have to send them down the track of hating their bodies.
Yeah, it's utter insanity. I don't think this has ever happened in human history. And I do not think the consequences are going to be positive for anybody.
But there's a little something hopeful, I think, in what you're saying, which is that in order for them to hate what was done to them, these potentially hundreds of thousands or even millions of people, and the lies that they were told, they would have had to woken up to the truth.
Yes.
And that means they could use the pain and, like Chloe, turn it into purpose. Like she's going off and campaigning to save children.
Absolutely.
So,
but she shouldn't have had to go through that,
right? Of course,
for that to happen, right? It's like I would like to stop the car crash before the car crash happens, rather than let's let the car crash and then people walk out injured and have learned from the lesson. It's like that's a very severe lesson for people to have to learn, especially when it's so predictable. Like you can see where it's going. You can see the car heading towards the wall or heading towards the cliff. And I'm not a bigot for yelling out stop. I'm just saying, like, look, this is crazy. Like, think about what you're doing. What you're saying is not even making sense. They're also opening other very extraordinarily dangerous portals. I mentioned this when I had a conversation with Matt Walsh, which is that they are eliminating the concept of minors not being able to consent.
It's so scary.
And that is, again, very dark. I tend to think second, third, fourth order consequences. So if something happens up here, I like to think, okay, what's the logical progression of these ideas? If you say that this is okay, well, what about this? What about that? What about that? Right? If you do this thing here, if you push that domino, what's the effect by the time you get to the third or the fourth or the fifth domino? And sometimes it's very predictable. It's not that I have a crystal ball. It's just that I can detach my emotions and logically think through some of these arguments. Because if you're saying, okay, this is okay, then by extension, that next thing is also okay. And it seems like there are so many decisions that are being made and things people are doing and pushing and being activists for and getting caught up in the hype for, where they're really not thinking past the first order consequences, right? Again, it's not so different to me. I hate talking about the pandemic because I despise the entire response to it, but it's the same where, if you do certain things there. So right now people are complaining about inflation and the cost of living and this and this. And it's like, well, I and many other people knew that in 2020, if you stop people from working and you shut down businesses and then you pump trillions and trillions into the economy and you give people money for doing nothing, you will get inflation. If you stop children from going to school for a year plus and they're not seeing human faces and whatever, they're going to have some developmental issues. Now you've got tons of children now going to speech therapy and, some of them are dealing with sort of weird mental issues and anxiety. Because, if you were you've got young children, right? Maybe they're like young enough that they almost like kind of missed the worst of it. But if you have like, I don't know, a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old and, or a child who was 4 or 5 at the beginning of, say, 2020, and then for like, I don't know, half of their life, they're surrounded by all this madness and, they're seeing everyone panicking and they're not seeing human faces and they're not in school. They're not being social.
Zoom. I mean, how do you go to school over Zoom when you're 5 years old?
I don't know exactly all the long-term consequences of that, but there will be some because that's not normal, right? We're social beings. Like we have to be out there socializing and meeting other people, and then when you then when you also drill into them that hey, you need to stay away from don't touch your friends, don't touch your family members. Hugs are dangerous. You could kill someone by hugging them. Like, that's a really horrible, even if someone thinks the intention behind it is good, I would say it's absolutely not. But the consequences of that are real. Like, that's not how we didn't grow up like that, right?